I'm Ed Baum, and I'm the coordinator of these candidates forum for the Athens County League of Women Voters. We're so pleased you are here for this forum between Debbie Phillips, who currently represents the 94th House seat in Ohio, and Yolande Dennis, who would like to. Cecile Weldon, who is our timekeeper. Our reviewers are Linda Parsons and Catherine Jellison. League of Women Voters of Athens County, and Mary Costello will give a little pitch, which she can do since it's nonpartisan.
I'm co-president of League of Women Voters of Athens County with Ellsworth Holden, who is our moderator tonight. The League of Women Voters is committed to ensuring that voters go to the polls educated about the candidates that they will be choosing between. We put together a voter guide each election season. The Messenger will be publishing that. The information in the voter guide is available to you now at our website, athensleagueofwomenvoters.org. You'll also find a link to the voter guide put out by the League of Women Voters of Ohio about the statewide candidates. We were hoping to have a forum on the 21st. Steve Stivers and Scott Wharton. The Stivers campaign indicated that Steve Stivers wasn't available on the 21st. But we feel so committed to presenting you the forums and wanting you to see and hear it from the candidates that we did ask if there was any other date, that we would try to be flexible and try to have a forum on another date, but we didn't hear back from that. League of Women Voters has a no empty chair rule, which means that we cannot have a forum with only one candidate. We would welcome any and all of you to join us in membership in the League.
Welcome to this candidate forum sponsored by the Athens Public Library and the Athens County League of Women Voters. Tonight we hear from the candidates for the Ohio House of Representatives for the 94th District, Yolande Dennis and Debbie Phillips. Turn to the members of our media panel and invite one question apiece to the candidates. The order are Julia Fair of the Post, David DeWitt of the Athens News, and Sarah Brumfield of the Athens Messenger. After the media questions, we will turn to questions from you audience members. Debbie Phillips, your opening statement, please.
First, I want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters and the library for hosting this forum and all you do to help provide educational opportunities in our community and help promote a civil dialogue. I think it's really important and appreciate very much the work that you do. Secondly, while Ed couldn't say it, I will. I really would encourage people to get out and vote for the library levy. The libraries provide a lot of really important services in many communities in Athens County, and I promised Sandy Shirey that along the way during the campaign I would also mention the importance of the renewal of the senior services levy, which is a very small levy that will pay for Meals on Wheels and important services in our community. So just encourage you to take a look at the issues that are on the ballot as well. It has been a great privilege to have the opportunity of working for you for 3 terms. I'm in my 3rd term now as your representative in the Ohio House. The 94th House District lines have changed somewhat, so the district now includes most of Athens County, all of Meigs County, and parts of Benton and Washington counties. And I have worked really hard to stay in touch with each of the local communities that are part of the district, holding quarterly roundtable discussions in each of the 4 counties, and holding every other year a listening tour where I get out to more of the towns and villages throughout the district, so I have an opportunity to hear from local citizens about your concerns and priorities and answer questions, provide updates, and just make sure that I am working on the issues that are important to folks here in the community. And I really appreciate everyone who's taken the time over the years to participate in those discussions. They've been very helpful to me. I think that approach of really trying to work with the different communities and different groups of people in the communities is part of why I've been able to earn the endorsements of a variety of organizations, which I respect, and I'll share just a few of those. I'm very pleased to have the Friend of Agriculture designation from the Ohio Farm Bureau, and to have the endorsements of a variety of organizations such as the Fraternal Order of Police, the NRA, the OEA, OFT, the various teachers unions, just got the ACT Ohio, which is affiliated construction trades, just a variety of organizations from different perspectives, and really appreciate the vote of confidence and the support of those groups in seeking a fourth term. I've worked really hard to try to fight for our region and bring investments into the region. I think most notably we were fortunate to be able to take advantage of the stimulus funds to finally get the money in place for the Nelsonville bypass, which has really made it a little bit of a quicker trip to Columbus and improved safety on our local highways. And since I am out of time, I'll talk about some other things. Oops, okay. But I hope to have the opportunity to keep fighting for Southeastern Ohio, fight to restore the local government funds and for our local schools. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I also want to thank the League of Women Voters for this forum and all in attendance. It's really good that you come out on a kind of a dreary day and hear about the candidates and what we had to say. Again, I'm Yolande Dennis. I'm a candidate for the 94th District, and Debbie went over the counties in the district. But I am someone who has become very concerned about issues surrounding all kinds of things that are going on in our communities and our state. I grew up in Washington County on a farm, and my husband and I live on a farm now where we have raised our 5 grandchildren. I'm a registered nurse. I was blessed to be able to stay home with my children while they were growing up, and then when the youngest child started school, I went back to work. So I've done a lot of different variety types of nursing. Presently, I work in a physician's office. I'm active in the community. All the time that my children were in school, I volunteered at the schools. Things that I've been involved in include church and Bible school, firefighters, the local firemen and their festivals and things like that. Growing up, I learned a lot about hard work and responsibility and dedication to projects and just being a responsible person. So as I look around and see things that concern me with the district, we need to have some new leadership. I am someone who will stand up for the small business people. I am someone who will stand up against the regulations that are choking our small business and people who are trying to make a difference in our region. I am someone who will stand up against the federal intrusion of our everyday lives. And some of those intrusions include Obamacare. My husband is a family practice physician, and because of Obamacare, he was forced to sell his practice. So he can no longer see his patients in a timely manner. He can no longer treat his patients the way he wants. I have seen firsthand the demoralization of what has happened in the healthcare field with the people that I work with. I am someone who cares about the Common Core issue. Parents and teachers have expressed a lot of concern in this area about what is happening, and I am someone who is in favor of repeal of Common Core.
Fair, the OU Post.
I have worked really hard on a number of issues that I think are important to students. When Governor Strickland was in the governor's office, we were actually able to freeze tuition. Unfortunately, that's something that hasn't been able to be maintained with the state's budget challenges since the Great Recession, but that was something that I was really proud to be able to work on. I've also worked very hard to protect access to the ballot. Unfortunately, the current administration and the current majority in the legislature have been taking steps to try to make it more difficult for people to vote. I think that particularly when young citizens are getting involved in the process, it's important that they have a good experience, and I find it very frustrating to think that some people could show up to vote for the first time and end up getting turned away for bureaucratic reasons in a state where we have no evidence of voter fraud. So I've been working to protect students' rights, and I've been working to try to help control the cost of tuition. I also think that we really need to encourage better collaboration between higher ed and local industries to make sure that we're helping people come out of school with marketable skills where they're going to be able to get a job very, very soon upon graduation. So I hope that we can work together on those issues.
Ohio University students should vote for me like any other student should vote for me. I've had 4 out of my 5 children have gone to college, and they've worked very hard. And when you go to college, you want to be able to come out with marketable skills and be able to get a job. And we need job opportunities in this region. So that is why the students need to vote for me. I'm a person who is pro-job, and there are lots of opportunities going to be out there, especially with the oil and gas industry coming. Marietta College has a new program this year, land management. They have a top-of-the-notch petroleum engineering program, and OU has a lot of really good programs too. But just as an example, college students are going to have debt coming out of college, and so they need to be able to get a job when they come out. So, and if they choose to stay in this area, which, you know, if they are from this area and they want to stay in this area, they're going to need to be able to find a job. In the current legislation and in the current assembly, jobs are kind of hard to come by, and we need someone who will help stimulate the area to foster job growth.
For the next question then, Yolanda, you'll address it first, and we turn to David DeWitt of the Athens News. David?
Thank you, Ellsworth. In recent budgets, various government expenses have been slashed to fund tax cuts that have been aimed predominantly at top earners. Governor Kasich has repeatedly stated his intention to use severance tax money from oil and gas drilling for more such income tax reductions. My question is, do you believe that tax cuts for top earners spur job creation? And do you believe that the allocation of severance tax money is appropriate?
I believe that the allocation for severance tax is appropriate. I would like to see it even lower because I think that we need to give those people an opportunity to invest. It takes a lot of capital for someone to invest in the oil and gas industry. And so in order to keep those people here, we need to make sure that we keep the taxes low as possible. Again, it is a huge investment. Think of all the things that they have to pay for. And they have lots of taxes themselves that they need to pay for. And just all the jobs that they will be creating, well workers. There's just a tremendous amount of things that come into play with the business. So we need to keep those taxes as low as possible. In reference to Governor Kasich's tax cuts to the wealthy, some of those people are providing jobs and they have businesses that they will be able to extend to the people that are working for them. I am for tax cuts across the board. I think that we need to make sure that we give everybody a break that is possible.
Thanks for the question. You snuck 2 in there in one. So first, with respect to Governor Kasich's tax policy, it has been more of a tax shift. He really tried to keep the focus on the income tax cut, but I think it's important to look at where the money comes from to make up the difference. The cuts for the small businesses that were included in part of that package were not large enough to create one job for those filers. Those are generally pass-through filers, so people who have like a 1 or 2 person office. To make up for the revenue and pay for the state's services, the sales tax was increased, which we all pay. The homestead exemption has been means tested now, so if you're not yet 65 and receiving that when you turn 65, you may or may not get it. So it's putting the tax burden more on everybody through the sales tax and seniors through means testing the homestead exemption. So it really just shifted the burden more onto our local communities. With respect to the severance tax, we are currently far lower than the other oil producing states. Because the resource is here, that activity will continue. The the oil and gas companies can afford to pay their share. What's important is that any revenue from the severance tax is invested in our local communities and in oversight and regulation of the industry. We need to be able to maintain infrastructure based on the impacts from the industry, and the money should be invested in the local communities.
Turn to Sarah Brumfield of the Athens Messengers.
Should your decision-making as a legislator be more based on your personal beliefs and opinions or those of your constituents, even if those constituents disagree with your personal beliefs?
I have always tried to balance that. I think that when people cast their vote, I've tried to provide information so that people know generally how I approach things and what I believe. I spend a lot of time listening to people in the local community and work very hard to represent what people tell me they want me to do at the State House. But there are times when things are moving fast and when we're provided with a lot more detailed information than has been discussed widely in the media, and we have to use our own judgment. So I really do generally try to balance that with a lot of conversation with people in the community, letting people know generally how I approach things and where I stand on issues, and then using my best judgment when you have to make those calls.
With my decisions in life, I use my moral convictions and my principles, and that's what I would do at the State House also. Of course, you have to listen to your constituents and get their advice and get their ideas and get their concerns, and you have to kind of blend all that together, but you still have to stand on your moral convictions and principles. I believe that's what I've always done in my life, so I would continue with that.
Now we'll turn to questions from the audience. What is your opinion of the Common Core, and what knowledge of education do you have to make that decision? And secondly, if Common Core is not a curriculum, why do schools and the state have to purchase Common Core approved textbooks and materials?
My opinion of Common Core is, as I have talked to a lot of people, a lot of families, a lot of teachers, retired teachers, my opinion is, and also as I have done a lot of research, that I think that Common Core needs to be repealed. And I come to that knowledge because in my experience, again, talking to everyone, and it is their opinion and their feelings that it should be repealed. There are a lot of issues that surround Common Core. I believe that it takes away the power and decision-making of our local educators, our teachers, and our parents. I think we always need to keep these people involved in the education process. While my kids were growing up, I was very involved in their education. And as they brought things home from school to work on or whatever, I was involved in the process. A Common Core is curriculum. I have seen stacks of textbooks and materials on administrators' desks, and it is geared toward the standards, but it is curriculum.
First of all, to be clear, Common Core was developed by the states, by the state education administrators and the Governors Association. It is a set of standards in English language arts and math. It is not a curriculum. There is no required curriculum. It basically sets the bar so that if a student here takes Algebra 2 and a student in another state takes Algebra 2, we're able to understand that they've learned certain things and they know how to do certain things. This came about at a time when I believe it's more than 40% of Ohio high school graduates who go to college have to take remedial classes when they get to college. So these are students who did everything that they were told they were supposed to do in high school, and they were not ready for college or career when they graduated high school. We have not been doing what we need to do for students, and setting the bar high is a reasonable thing to do. There are implementation issues with Common Core that need to be addressed, but there is no required curriculum. Many schools have spent an extended period of time working through their curriculum and aligning to the standards and figuring out their plan to be able to hit that bar. And there's been a significant investment of time by many Ohio educators developing curriculum to get to the standard.
Southeastern Ohio has a terrible economic reputation. What will you do to fix it?
And I disagree with the premise of the question. I think there are a lot of great things happening in Southeastern Ohio, and I think that an important part of what we do as leaders is to hold up successes and help people see what we're doing well here. Ohio University has one of the best rates of technology transfer of any institution of higher education, where research that's been done at the university has been turned into marketable products. We've got Quidel out on East State Street. We've got the various companies that have been supported by the Innovation Center. There are great things happening in Southeastern Ohio on an economic basis, and we're able to tell that story when we work together. You know, if there are people who take a negative view economically, I think they're just not looking at the success stories. I think we've done a lot of really strong economic networking and development of models that work well in the region. We are recognized nationally for our local food economy, the farmers market, and the strength of our independent restaurants and the networking that goes on there. There are people in Washington, D.C. who buy milk from here in the district, right? So there are some great things going on here, and I think we just need to work together to tell that story and get more interest and excitement about the things that we're doing well in Southeastern Ohio.
Southeastern Ohio has a terrible economic reputation. What will you do to fix it?
Foster the energy. We have a lot of energy here in our region that we can foster. We can become energy independent. Our nation can become energy independent. We are sitting on top of it here in Eastern Ohio, Southeastern Ohio. Meigs County is really hurting for jobs. They are ranked second in the state in unemployment. So they are really hurting for economic opportunities here. I am here to foster the energy department, the energy fields, look at the area in Steubenville and Youngstown. They are making steel again because of the energy industry. Those steel mills are open, they are working. We can make things in America again. We can make things right here in Ohio. Manufacturing is coming back, and we can be a big part of it. Housing, hotels, all kinds of infrastructure, all kinds of things can lead us in the right direction economically with the energy industry. And we also need to include coal. The coal industry needs to be supported as much as possible. I have a gentleman that lives up the road from me, and he is an engineer for a coal company. He is in charge of reclamation. We can do this in a good and clean, environmentally safe way. He is in charge of reclamation, and it's impeccable, the job he does.
How do Ms. Dennis and Ms. Phillips feel about the liberty of collective bargaining?
I believe that unions have the right to collectively bargain. I also am in favor of right to work, but they do have the right to collectively bargain. I have a son-in-law and a son that works in the union, so I am not against that at all. I believe that the teachers that I have supported collectively bargain also, but also, you know, we have the right to work where we want to. We should have the freedom not to join a union or to join the union.
I mean, I can start with talking about my track record. I voted against Senate Bill 5 when it came through the House and worked actively with local citizens to repeal it. Athens County had better than 80% vote to repeal Senate Bill 5, and it was the strongest showing in the entire state. I am opposed to so-called right to work. There's a lot of misinformation that is bandied about with respect to what that means, but there is, you know, currently no one is required to join a union, but the unions are still required to represent all members of the bargaining unit. And so unions are allowed to charge fair share fees to cover the cost of representing those employees who choose not to join the union. So there is no forced unionization, and the states that have so-called right to work laws on the books have worse track records with respect to workplace safety, and they have lower wages across the board, not just for union workers, but for everyone. There are even increased workplace fatalities in states that have so-called right-to-work laws, as opposed to states that do not. And I would fight alongside all of our friends in the family of labor to oppose any efforts to push so-called right-to-work through here in the state of Ohio.
To expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, the governor bypassed the opposing legislature. Because of this expansion, over 3,000 additional Athens County residents are now covered by Medicaid. Do you support this expansion of Medicaid?
Yeah, I do support the expansion of Medicaid. I was one of the people who signed the discharge petition to try to get the bill out of committee when the majority was refusing to move the bill. I think it is incredibly important that people have access to primary care. I think that can help us control costs in the healthcare industry overall. I think it's far better for people to have access to primary care than to show up in the ER when they are facing a worse situation in the most expensive care setting available. So the expansion of access to Medicaid in Ohio has helped to provide that access to people who need it. I think that all of us would have preferred the chance for an up or down vote in the legislature. And my understanding is, from the various counts that were taken while the bill was being debated, is that if it had ever been brought to an actual vote on the floor, it would have passed. There were plenty of House Republicans who supported the legislation along with the House Democrats, way more than enough to pass the bill. But because of the influence of the extreme right wing of the party and their efforts to hold together a very fractured caucus, similar to what Speaker Boehner has been dealing with in Congress, they did not bring the bill to the floor for a vote. Had it come up for a vote, it certainly would have passed through a more traditional process. So I'm glad we got the expansion. I'm sorry it couldn't happen through a straight up or down vote on the floor of the House.
I was not in favor of the expansion. I am not against people having health care because I'm a registered nurse, and we do not turn anybody away at our office depending on the ability to pay. We just don't do that. But I am concerned, the big concern is down the road, when this money is gone, who is going to pay for the expansion then? Where is the cost going to come from? It's going to come from taxpayers, and that is going to be a big burden. That is going to be a big expense when that money runs out. Again, everybody needs health care. The expansion of Medicaid, while may be a positive thing, some of the coverage quite actually is not very good. We have a very difficult time in the office getting things covered, even under the expansion.
Currently, an undocumented immigrant workforce is an important issue in the construction industry. Could you support legislation that would hold contractors that use undocumented workers accountable, including tougher criminal penalties for those who use them?
Well, I certainly think that we need tough laws and good regulations for the immigrants. I'm not sure if we should put stiffer penalties on the owners of businesses, though. It probably is something that we would need to take a real close look at and see what needs to be done. I'm just not sure that that is the route that we need to go, to put real stiff penalties on farmers and things like that.
I think that one of the areas that people are not as familiar with respect to undocumented workers is that there are employers who bring people in on work visas and then end up treating these workers very badly. There are situations where people are living in conditions that are really a form of indentured servitude, and so it's a concern both within the industry and for the individuals and the way they're being treated. What I have done over the course of the last couple General Assemblies is to work on some issues that deal with the construction industry. I'm the lead sponsor of a bill that would deal with employers who are really kind of creating an uneven playing field by treating their employees as if they were independent contractors. And that would really get at a lot of this. There are businesses who treat all of their employees as independent contractors and give them a 1099 instead of treating them as employees and doing the withholding. And that allows them to keep a lot of this work off the books. And so we've got that uneven playing field issue, as well as the fact that the local taxes and withholding aren't being done. So this bill would deal specifically with making a clear definition of employee versus independent contractor, a common test that would be used across all the state agencies that deal with employment. And it was based on recommendations from Attorney General Richard Cordray's task force.
Do you have a plan to bring back to local villages and townships state money that has been taken away in the last few years?
I absolutely support that. To give a little background, when the state created a state income tax, it was really pitched as a partnership to cover the services that we need here in the state. And so there's a distribution formula where some money goes to schools and some goes to the local communities and some goes to the libraries. And the local government fund was set as a percentage of the state's general revenue fund. So Governor Kasich in his first budget actually cut the local government fund formula by 50%, and creating a significant reduction in funds to townships, villages, cities, and counties. I voted against that. That was part of how he paid for the income tax cut that was included in his first budget, essentially a shell game, pulling money out of our communities and redistributing it to the wealthiest individuals in the state. So we have continued to offer amendments to try to restore the local government funds as different proposals have come forward about what to do with revenue that's coming in above projections. And I will continue to offer those amendments and fight to restore the local government funds, because we have townships and villages who are struggling just to cover basic services.
Yes, I agree. The local townships, local governments do need some of that money restored. I believe that the cuts were too deep. I've talked to my county auditor, and as we went over some figures and things, we both agree that the cuts were too severe. So we do need to restore those monies to the townships. A lot of townships don't have any industry at all, so they are really hurting to keep their roads repaired, just to perform basic services for their townships. So yes, we do need to restore those monies. I've told township trustees that it will be a priority of mine in Columbus to get some of that money restored.
Are you pro-choice or pro-life, and why?
I am pro-life, and I am pro-life because I am a Christian and I believe that God is the one that gives life. It's just that simple for me. Anybody who chooses to have an abortion, there are women who need some tough choices to make. But think about the saying by George Bernard Shaw, responsibility, freedom brings responsibility. That is why men dread it. Whose responsibility is it? If young people want to have the freedom to do whatever they want to do, then they need to take the responsibility for the outcome. Abortion is a terrible thing. As a Christian, we can pray for those people who have to make these tough decisions, but there are other choices out there. When my husband was in residency, he delivered a woman who was 25 weeks, and he ran down the hall with this baby in the palm of his hand. He saw the feet of that infant. He saw the heart beating. That was only 25 weeks. That's a time when a lot of people, a lot of young women have abortions.
I'm pro-choice. I think that we need to work to make sure that people have real choices and make sure that people have accurate information. I think that the best way to reduce the number of abortions is to provide developmentally appropriate, medically accurate sex ed to young people and to make sure that we have access to contraception. I think that that is the best way to make sure that people who are faced with those decisions have a safe way to make their own medical choices. If you look at the legislation that has come through the legislature under this current majority, we have seen the defunding of Planned Parenthood. Everyone here knows that Planned Parenthood in Athens does not perform abortions. They provide medical care on a sliding fee scale basis. They do breast cancer screenings and cervical cancer screenings and provide access to contraception for a lot of women in southeastern Ohio. For some of these folks, it may be the only doctor they have access to because it's available on a sliding fee scale basis. There's legislation that has passed that I believe could lead to the deaths of women in ERs because doctors are not sure about what they are and are not allowed to do. I think it's a dangerous situation.
Do you believe illegal drugs are a problem in our district?
Yes, I do. I can talk a little bit more about that, though, if you like. We have had a serious epidemic of opiate addiction all over the region, but in southeastern Ohio, I think that we've been hit particularly hard by the what was really started by the pill mills. I think that we've done a good job legislatively in cracking down on the pill mills, but we still have people who became addicted during that time who are now shifting over and using heroin and other very dangerous substances. There are still places that we need to make progress, and that has been something that has been addressed in a very bipartisan way. It's one of the few issues that I think we've been able to work on pretty effectively together across party lines. Even simple things like we passed a bill recently which requires that hospice workers have a protocol in place for what they do with unused medications when a patient passes away. So that medication is collected back and appropriately disposed of, and it's not just left in a medicine cabinet for some curious young person to find and get into without knowing what a serious drug it is. So we've got a lot more work to do with respect to providing access to treatment, but I think that we are making progress, and there's a good effort underway of different partners in the community, law enforcement, treatment providers, and policymakers working together on the issue. So I'm hopeful.
Illegal drugs, yes. Opiates are legal drugs prescribed by physicians. Illegal drugs, yes, there is a big problem. Marijuana in particular. Marijuana is a very dangerous product, very dangerous drug. It's a gateway drug, leads to heroin and use of other illegal drugs. Marijuana is not only associated with harmful effects, it is associated with violence, abuse. It's harmful in the home because children are there, and there are a lot of things that come into play with the use of illegal drugs. The molecular cells in the brain are responsible for development and normal function of the brain. Marijuana greatly affects these functions. Memory, coordination, balance. It can affect the tissues of the lung. It can cause your heart to race. There are a lot of side effects associated with marijuana. We should not legalize it for any reason.
What are your ideas for, quote, good, unquote, jobs for our areas?
I'll have to go back to the energy industry because that's where it is right now. We're having an energy boom in southeastern Ohio. Again, a lot of opportunities are available, not only well workers. Infrastructure can be rebuilt, roads, the hotel industry, food. We just have a lot of opportunity here. Again, the manufacturing that is coming back to Ohio. When people have jobs, they can move out of poverty. When people have jobs, they can have a better living. We can have a better lifestyle. People will invest in their communities and in their schools, but we need good jobs. And I believe that right here underneath our feet, we have a lot of opportunity. We just need to be able to extract those gifts that God has given us. And in doing that, we can bring prosperity. Hopefully, a lot of families will choose to stay here and be with those that they love.
Good jobs really depends on the kinds of things people are interested in, and so it can mean a variety of different things. I think that we can really work to build on our strengths. We already are leaders with respect to clean and advanced energy and energy efficiency. We have a significant and developing biotech and medical cluster of businesses here in the area. And I think that both of these are things that work very well with the research capability of institutions that are here in the area. So those spin-offs can continue to be an avenue for job creation in our region. I also think that we have some really unique attributes in southeastern Ohio that we cherish, with the beauty of the region and the ability to really attract folks in who are interested in very active and ecotourism, who are interested in learning about our local food economy and the things that people are doing to create a really vibrant local economy here in southeastern Ohio. So there are a range of different types of jobs that I think can all be considered good jobs, that we can continue trying to strengthen those sectors. I do believe that we need to do more to help businesses develop and expand, and the new banking rules have made that very difficult, which is why previously I supported the working capital bill to help with the state's ability to help businesses in that expansion mode where they are, after they've had their initial launch and they're ready to really step up their game. I think that's a place where the state could help to intervene effectively.
Governor Kasich has made significant cuts to local schools. Do you support continuing these cuts? If so, why? If not, why not?
I think we need to invest in our local schools. I think we need to restore the money that was cut, and I think we need to go back to really looking what it takes to provide opportunities for our kids. I had the great pleasure and opportunity to work with Governor Strickland on developing the evidence-based model of actually trying to zero in and look at what is proven to be effective for kids and what does it cost to provide those things, like smaller classes in the early grades and access to a broader curriculum at the high school level. It was very frustrating when that was one of the first things that Governor Kasich did, was to eliminate the evidence-based model, replacing it with nothing, leaving us with no funding formula for his first 2 years in office. But I think that one area of promise right now where we can work in a bipartisan way is to look at funding for transportation. In rural southeastern Ohio, transportation eats up a much larger chunk of the school budget than it would if you're in a district the size of Bexley, right, where people are closer together. We've got districts where the buses travel 3,000 miles a day, the vehicle fleet for the school district. We could appropriately fund the transportation costs. It would allow us to channel the money that is available for schools into the classroom, into teachers, computers, textbooks, and supplies that we need to make sure our kids have similar levels of opportunity to other students across the state.
Well, the evidence-based with Governor Strickland, there was never a funding plan put in with that. And I would like to ask Debbie, what has her plan? Why hasn't she ever introduced a bill to address the education funding problem? Because ever since my oldest child started school, they've had this issue with funding and they haven't been able to come up with a formula. It's been deemed unconstitutional. So what has been done? Nothing has been done. They haven't been able to find a solution. We need to bring everybody together, all the experts, educators, parents. They've not been able to do that. So I think that we need to try to get everybody together to try to come up with some kind of funding solution for our schools. The funding has been cut, and we need to have a remedy for that, but no one's been able to come up with that. And that's something that we need to work really, really hard on, because in southeastern Ohio, our schools are hurting. City schools, Columbus City schools, they seem to have plenty of money. It's a richer district, but we're hurting here, and we need to figure something out to help our students.
Last winter, Ohio's electricity demand reached 95% of generating capacity. What are your plans to increase capacity on cloudy, windless winter days?
Really? Again, we have energy here in southeastern Ohio, and I think that is the key. I have no problem with wind and solar, but in southeastern Ohio, the wind doesn't blow every day and the sun doesn't shine all that much. So we can develop those energies, but they are inefficient right now. They are very inaffordable at this time. We can keep working on that, but the energy that we get from natural gas and from coal, there are due to be over 200 coal plants shut down in the United States in the next few years. And I think that is going to be a big problem. Like you said, last winter, all of the coal-firing plants were firing on all ends. There was a threat of brownouts and blackouts. So we have to be very careful how we cut the coal back. The EPA is in overstepping its bounds and wanting to come up with all these regulations that make it impossible for us to be able to be energy independent and use the coal like we need to.
I take a little bit of exception with the premise. Yes, there were great demands placed on the grid. I remember Mark Shanahan used to talk about Ohio as the Saudi Arabia of waste heat. We have still a lot of manufacturing and a lot of manufacturing capacity here in Ohio. And currently, the regulatory structure is such that if they were to build their own combined heat and power, capture that waste heat, capture the gases that are being flared, and use that to generate electricity, they still have to pay really high rates for standby capacity to the electric utilities. So it's hard to get the companies to make that investment in their physical plant when they have to still keep paying for the utilities to be able to meet demand if they need to. So I have worked on a couple different pieces of legislation that we haven't been able to get through, but to try to change the rules so that that capacity can be counted as part of baseload, and the industrial facility could have a plan that if their thing fails, maybe they would go down a shift a day until they fix it or something, that they wouldn't have to require AEP to meet their full demand instantaneously should their generating capacity fail. So I think there's a lot we can do with efficiency that is way beyond compact fluorescent light bulbs by dealing with combined heat and power at industrial facilities. And I do think it's an all of the above strategy if we're going to have real energy independence.
Do you favor reform of the process of drawing the boundaries of Ohio voting districts? And if so, what would be your strategy?
Absolutely. If you look at the district lines that we have right now, they are not reflective of the composition of the voters here in the state of Ohio. This is a state that re-elected Sherrod Brown and that re-elected President Obama, and yet 75% of our congressional delegation are Republicans, and 60 out of 99 of the House members are Republicans. The districts are drawn very creatively to try to come up with a particular outcome, and it's done in a very, very political way here in the state of Ohio. We did actually challenge this map. I believe that it's unconstitutional under our current constitutional rules because there are so many existing communities that were split in the drawing of this map, which is really already prohibited by our Constitution. I think that to strengthen the rules, it would be important to put in place provisions about being contiguous with existing jurisdictions so that if we have a county or a city or a township, that be kept whole to the greatest extent possible. There have to be some splits, right? Because Franklin County is not all going to be in one House district. But to also look at competitiveness as a really important factor. I think that people in this district have felt like they've got somebody they can really talk to, whether it was Jimmy Stewart or me, because this has been a pretty competitive district. And people, I think both of us worked hard to listen to people as a result. When the real fight happens in the primary, you end up with like Dennis Kucinich and the Tea Party and folks who are not really able to work together to solve problems because the districts are so extreme in both directions.
It is confusing the way that the lines are drawn. And I would have to take a real close look at it to see how it needs to be redone. As far as being unconstitutional, I'm not sure about that part, but we do need to take a look and see how the lines are drawn. It can be confusing for a lot of people. There are some areas in Washington County that people will have a hard time trying to figure out who is in their district and who they need to call as their representative. But it is something that we do need to take a look at.
Given the IPCC and the Pentagon's recent reports on the disruptive effects of the coming climate change, what should legislators in Ohio be doing to get the state ready to meet this challenge?
Boy, that's a tough question because I'm not one of those people who is all believes in climate change.
Thank you. I mean, I think that the science is pretty clear. When this issue came up, actually the bill that's been introduced that deals with Common Core at the State House would also repeal our state science standards and instead put in place a provision that require schools to teach the controversy with respect to evolution and climate science. And when I asked a question about that in committee, the sponsor of the bill told me to read the book State of Fear by Michael Crichton. If you're not familiar with it, it's a novel. So I have read it. It's an interesting read, but it's not a book I would look to try to understand the current consensus of the scientific community about the challenges that we're facing. I think that what we can do as policymakers in the state of Ohio is to work together to promote responsible steps with respect to construction and the different energy sources and looking at energy efficiency. There are incentives that we had in place here in Ohio which were recently repealed, which were being very effective at helping to stimulate significant job growth in the renewable and energy efficiency sector. So we've really gone backwards with the current majority and the current administration, and that's been a deep frustration to me when we are faced with such serious challenges.
What is your opinion on gas drilling under the Ohio River and the problems with injection wells?
I actually just recently heard that the state of West Virginia is entertaining permits for drilling underneath the Ohio River. We did have the issue come before us with respect to Lake Erie, and that's something that I opposed. I think that accidents happen in many industries, and when you're talking about the drinking water supply for a lot of different communities, it's important that we take extra measures to prevent the kind of serious crisis that we faced with the Leaf from Freedom Industries in West Virginia as an example of what happens when a community's water supply is contaminated. We just have to try to prevent the possibility of those things happening. With respect to injection wells, I am concerned about the amount of out-of-state waste that Ohio is taking, and Class 2 injection wells are taking waste from hydraulic fracturing operations. The Class 2 wells do not currently require any monitoring wells to be in place, and some of them are old oil and gas production wells. So I don't know that there's any way to know if that has been in the ground for decades already, whether the material is being injected into the formation that ODNR believes it's being injected into in the absence of monitoring wells. I think that it's just incredibly important that we have adequate oversight and monitoring to prevent danger to our local communities.
Well, in relation to drilling underneath the river, if you consider the depth of the river, and you're going to be drilling thousands and thousands and thousands of feet underneath there, they already do that in other places. And we have safeguards in place for that to happen. The wells have layers, several layers of protection. There are safeguards in place. We have excellent regulations in Ohio, and also that is the case for the injection wells. Now, I do have a concern about waste coming from other states. I think we might need to take a look at that. I don't know if we can do anything about that because of the interstate commerce laws, but that is something that we might need to look at. And I've talked to a lot of people, and they are concerned about that aspect of it. But the injection wells are very well regulated. Again, there's a lot of protection there. If you think about your water and your aquifers, those are just maybe 150 feet deep, where these injection wells go down up to 13,000 feet, and they have multiple layers of protection, and it goes down below impermeable area so that it cannot come back up to contaminate the water. We've been doing this since the 1930s. Don't you think we would have a problem by now if we were going to have a problem with safety in water?
In view of global heating due to coal combustion, can you support mining jobs, thereby trading present jobs for future difficulties?
Yes, I would support mining jobs. I've talked to a lot of people, and the coal mining in this area and in other areas has been a very important part of people's lives. As they have lost those jobs, they've lost their livelihood. I think we can do this in a safe and environmentally good way. There are restrictions in place. The coal industry is heavily regulated. I will allude to my neighbor again, who is an engineer in the coal industry. He's in charge of reclamation. There are multiple studies that they have to go through in order to get a permit to mine. Once they are done with this, you would not even know that the land has been mined. The impeccable job of grazing area that they come up with is just a beautiful sight to see. I think that we need to encourage those in the coal industry to hang in there, and we need to fight the EPA on their overregulation.
I do believe that it's an all-of-the-above strategy as we transition. I do believe that coal is part of maintaining baseload capacity and making sure that we maintain manufacturing capacity here in Ohio. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the United Mine Workers. It's really important that we also continue to fight for safety for the people who are doing that work, and that we continue to fight to take care of the folks who've sacrificed their health in doing that work. We've currently been dealing with an issue with the administration with respect to a black lung study to try to continue to help the folks who've been impacted from doing the work of going down in there in very dangerous situations to provide the energy that we've been depending on in this country. I support the miners. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the mine workers, and I think that it's part of the mix. I think that we can do a lot more with renewables and energy efficiency, but I think that coal is part of our local economy, and it's an important part.
Following earlier, Yolande Dennis will give the first 2-minute closing statement. Yolande?
Well, thank you again for sponsoring this forum. Southeastern Ohio is often a forgotten part of the state, and in fact, our area here is neglected. We have lost over 5,000 jobs in recent years. 3 out of the 4 counties are ranked 2nd, 10th, and 17th in unemployment, and that is not acceptable. I am someone who will listen to business owners and others in the area with their concerns and ideas. I want to hear what their concerns are, what their ideas are, and we need to take those back to Columbus. I am someone who will fight against that federal intrusion into the everyday aspect of our lives. Obamacare, Common Core, infringe upon our Second Amendment rights, agriculture and farming. The EPA wants to take over regulation, more authority through the Clean Water Act. So I will be someone who will stand up and fight for what is right. Everywhere I go, people ask me why I would want to run for office with the negativity and the challenges that it poses. And I tell them, we need honest, capable, passionate people to step up and make decisions for the people in our district based on their needs and their desires and what they need for their families. And I will be a person who will do that. This race is not about separating Democrats and Republicans. It's about the citizens as a whole of our state. When someone comes into the office, I don't ask them if they're a Republican or a Democrat. I don't ask them what their socioeconomic background is. They are treated with respect and the care that they deserve. And I believe everyone in Ohio needs to have the time for that. I would greatly appreciate your vote. Thank you very much.
I want to thank the League very, very much for sponsoring the forum, and the library for providing the space, and all of you for taking the time to be here tonight. You know, however you end up voting in this race and in the other ones, I think it shows a remarkable commitment on your part to take the time to come out and really listen to the issues in depth. So thank you for being here and making the time to be part of this process. I have really enjoyed my time working for you in the State House. There are days when it is wildly frustrating because the partisanship is as bad as what you see going on in Washington. But there are days when we're able to get things done that really do help people in the region, whether it's an individual who's been having a difficult time dealing with a state agency and we can help cut through the bureaucracy, whether it's managing to get some investment in our region for projects like Stewart's Opera House and the Dairy Barn Second Century, or whether it's working on something that I think could be really world-changing like the evidence-based model, which we did pass and which Bill Phillips said put us on track to a constitutional school funding system. Unfortunately, it was not allowed to be fully implemented. But, you know, we'll continue that fight. We'll keep fighting for the region and fighting for our kids. And I have really enjoyed the opportunity to do that. And I hope that I'll be able to count on your support to be up there for 2 more years working for you up at the State House, and look forward to continuing many discussions with people, whether it's at the roundtable meetings or at the farmer's market or in the aisles at Kroger. I love that people in this community come up and are very, very clear and open in sharing their opinions about stuff that we're working on, and I hope I have the chance to keep working with you and for you. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you, representatives of the news media, Julia Fair, David DeWitt, and Sarah Brumfield. From the library, Todd Bastine, and several League of Women Voters members who worked and set this up. Ed Baum, Mary Costello, Seal Weldon, Mary Lee Powell, Catherine Jellison, Linda Parsons. I am always proud and pleased to be part of our candidates nights here. If you wanted to go around the world and take a little videotape of this and show this throughout the world, here's democracy at work in Athens, Ohio. Most people have never seen anything close to this in terms of their governmental processes. So I want to thank you and the library and the league, because they're the ones who do this.